our sporting year there. So one wonders, Francis, as we go over to your wall, what's on your wall? What charts do you have? And does it bode well for the 2018?
Well, it's interesting because if we had been chatting this time last year, I don't know if you remember, but it was all doom and gloom, recession. Everybody was taking their money offshore to make cash. And what we're looking at tonight is the investment year that was 2017, and it was fantastic. So you shouldn't have taken all your money offshore. And then we'll look at the expectations for this year as well. This time last year, there were those fears about recession, poor economic growth, and then things just got worse with the credit rating downgrades, the Steinhoff debacle towards the end of the year. So who would have thought that if you had invested on the JSE, which had also performed badly the year before, by the way, then your gains for 2017 would be looking spectacular. Off the charts, let's start with our first chart of the day. We're going to bring you a few for the new year. The gains on the JSE. So you can see over the year, in rand terms, if your money was invested proportionally across all stocks on the JSE, the all share index, you would have made, you see the upward trend, 21%. And the big stocks did really well. So if you tracked the top 40 shares and returned your dividends into your investments, you would have made 23%. So this chart going up, and you can see especially in the second half of the year. Government also uses bonds to raise debt. The interest on those bonds really a sign of the faith that investors have in this country, and South African bonds also gave brilliant returns. But let's look at the rand. Who would have thought again? The rand strengthening by 11% against the dollar last year. And if we just pause here, remember that when the rand is strengthening, it's going down on our chart because you need less rand to buy a dollar, meaning our rand has more clout. And this mainly happened towards the end of the year in December, when the rand was spurred on by the so-called Ramaphosa rally, believing that the new ANC president will push through business-friendly policies. The rand hit a 2.5-year high of 12.23, somewhere down here. Just last week, it was last seen this longest winning streak. We haven't seen anything like it since 2002. The question is, will the rally fizzle? The rand was weaker. It was trading closer to 12.40 today, you can see, and that's a little bit weaker than those highs that we've seen. And a Reuters poll of strategists published last week also focused on the possibility that Cyril Ramaphosa may well be hamstrung by the divisions within the ANC. So they believe that the rand could in fact weaken by more than 12% this year. All right, let's get some analysis, some crystal ball gazing, I hope, with Owen Nkomo from Mkunzi Wealth Group. Thank you for being with us, Owen.
Thank you.
So let's start with the JSE. Would you have thought we would have seen 21%, 23% if we were talking this time last year?
No, look, I mean, I think with all the negative sentiments around leadership, all the negative sentiment around the growth in the economy, it was factored in that the currency would weaken, and with that in mind, you know, would have expected that the dual listed names would have done well, and they actually did. You know, Naspers and a few other names, especially in the mining sector, that actually recovered. You know, it seems to me that China last year was not an issue at all on anyone's minds. It was all about growth in America, growth and recovery in Europe, and the weakness of the currency as well. And all those spectacular reshuffles we saw at midnight hour, you know, weakening the currency, I think almost would have given you room to believe that the JSE would rally. But 21%, it would have been a very difficult call to make, given the backdrop of the economy that I've just described.
The question is now, though, is this as good as it gets? And like you said, it was all based on rand weakness. In fact, the rand was stronger, which reduced some of those gains coming from overseas. But now, after these sort of gains, can we do this again? Surely not.
No, look, I mean, you can't rule out the possibility of the JSE doing well again. It can definitely do better. Why I say that is, you know, if you continue to see recovery in the US economy, where they've got unemployment at 4.1%, and all these promises that Donald Trump has made in America to that basically favor business and the markets. And if you continue to see China trade where it's trading, to see China growing where it's growing, and Europe seeing some recovery with the guys gaining confidence, starting to increase interest rates in Europe again, one can almost surmise that with enough confidence in the world and with enough confidence in South Africa, we could definitely see the South African market going higher. And I say that because if you look at where we are right now, we're starting to see quite a lot of cash going to South African local names, and if you pair that up with the fact that the rest of the world is still recovering nicely, you could still continue to see some recovery as well in some of the dual listed stocks. If you look at things like Kumba, Exxaro, and a few other stocks, they are up still today, even despite a relatively stronger rand. I mean, Exxaro alone is trading at about 164. Kumba is recovering, Billiton's doing much better. So guys seem to be taking the strength of the rands in their strides. But I think it's a very, very susceptible sector, in my view, is a property space where guys have invested offshore quite significantly.
Okay, and if we look back at this last year, the gains were good despite the Steinhoff debacle. But imagine it had been a Naspers debacle. They did have a crisis, but nothing that hit that huge, big hitting stock on the JSE. Is that still a risk?
Look, I mean, this Naspers is obviously a special stock because it contributes quite a lot to the JSE in terms of the value. If Steinhoff was Naspers, I think the year would probably have been, it should have been an uglier year in my view. Steinhoff, yes, it's 200-odd billion that's got wiped off the balance sheets and the market caps of that company. But, if it had happened with Naspers, I'll be very worried. And I think for Naspers, the long-term belief is that, the Chinese government is not going to change any of their regulations anytime soon. So that's going to continue to favor Tencent. You're not going to have an influx of guys like Facebook and, Instagram and all those social media platforms that would bring more competition to Tencent.
Is there not any fear? You were saying there's huge interest in South Africa right now, which is great, and probably the positivity around our politics, the news going out to the world helping. But emerging markets generally had a good run last year. Couldn't that move to the developed world, looking at what is happening right now?
But look, I think the challenge that remains, we always look at it from an interest rate perspective. Or a yield perspective, return perspective. If you look at developed economies, how much are you returning? You're returning at best probably 3%. But if you come to developing economies like us, where we really believe, in my view, that this could be a great year if policy implementation comes back, if there's political certainty, you'll start to see corporate South Africa pump money back into the system. And that, in my view, will increase the probability of people getting higher returns from investing in South Africa and maybe other major markets as well. So I don't think it's going to be, it's not exactly I think.
And what you're suggesting is there's a lot of goodwill, sort of latent goodwill. We just have to do a few things right, and people will pile in and be happy.
Most definitely. It's one word, Francis, which is called confidence. Confidence is all that we need to see. I mean, I was happy yesterday seeing the president of the ANC in KZN visiting Isilo, going out there, they look happy together. They look like a happy bunch, this NEC and all the other guys. And I'm hoping that their happiness is going to be seen through them being able to work together. The last thing we want is to see fracturing between the NEC of the ANC, that I will take a spectral position where we're worried about the politics. But one thing I'm personally looking forward to is Parliament this year, because with our President Zuma no longer leading the ANC, I don't know what the tone of contention is going to be in Parliament. But certainly confidence is back, and you're starting to see people commit capital back in South Africa again. And
Ramaphosa was saying unity is everything for 2019 and for the economy as well. But there was this rally in the rand, so let's move to the rand around Ramaphosa, but that seems to be coming off a little bit. Is that rally losing steam, basically?
No, look, I mean, I think the market has adjusted quite extensively to the fact that Mr. Ramaphosa is in charge of the ANC. There's hope that policy changes will come that will be more effective for the country to see GDP going up, for the country to see its unemployment numbers go down. But I can still safely say that there's one or two more decisions that could be made that will see this currency go probably to 12 bucks, in my humble view. And we have a few weeks to see that those decisions being made. Look, I mean, I think they pretend obviously
the exit of President Jacob Zuma.
You know, that's one of the things that will need to happen. And you know, in the budget,
so there'll be a rand rally if that
yes,
happens.
obviously. And then in the budget as well, if the budget comes out in a manner that surprises us on the upside, and we do find that missing 50 billion to 80 billion odd rands, then the ratings agencies start to look at us differently. They promise a re-rating, and I think the currency will definitely firm up. And all of that, you're seeing it in some of the interest rate instruments that are now showing that people are anticipating interest rates to go down. And also, if you get the Reserve Bank cutting interest rates, in my view, which will obviously help the economy grow, I do think that those are some of the catalysts we still need to see coming through for the currency to firm up.
There is this paradox, though. Cyril Ramaphosa, supported by the Rand and the investors behind that because he's seen as the business-friendly guy. Today he was saying that expropriation of land without compensation is going to happen. I think he needs to play that, to find that balance and take land seriously, but could that be behind a little bit of the weakening of the Rand?
I don't even, honestly speaking,
Are people
Francis,
worried about
I really
that?
don't think the Rand is weak at 12.43. I really think it's still firm in my view. I'll get worried if I see it go above 12.60, but where it's sitting, it's just a correction. As you can see, it's trading range bound now,
okay, but
12.25 to 12.40.
because then it suggests he has the clout to talk about radical economic transformation and still garner the support of business at the same time. He doesn't have to be one way or the other.
No, look, I mean, the good thing about the last conference of the ANC is that the guys did pronounce that, look, we're not going to do this at any cost. You know, expropriation of land, in my view, really definitely has to happen. But we shouldn't destroy the economy in the process. So we've got a few examples, you know, that we can look at to avoid implementing policies around the land issue that are going to be ineffective for the rest of the economy, you know. I mean, there are people out there that have been given a choice in the past between getting back the land they reclaimed or getting cash, and the guys have taken cash. So I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, in my view, to find the right kind of policy strategy around land and implementing it, and how it's going to be implemented, in my view, remains very important. And I think if the ANC has failed to tackle it over the past 23 odd years, I don't know what they're going to do this time around that will be different. But
and we need information. I still don't know how much wealth there is, in fact, in land, or how much of that wealth is in the markets or leaving the country. Do you know what I mean? We don't know what's there. I
can tell you there's a lot of wealth in the city, and I don't know why land in the city is not being taken. Because you can value that, right? All those big buildings have got value. I mean, it seems right now the focus is on taking farming land that's out of the cities, you know, where you know, direct value can be seen in the inner cities, in the CBDs, etc. But let's hope that whatever decision is made by the ANC and Cyril Ramaphosa, under Cyril Ramaphosa's leadership, will make sure that the economy has got room to survive, or to avoid the Zim fallout that happened a few years ago. Because, you know, farming still plays a big role in the country, but at the same time, without a balance sheet, as a black person in the country, it's still very difficult to go to the bank and say, I've got this business idea, I need you to fund me. So there definitely is a need to find a solution to the land question. And I personally would like to see what the white farming community is putting forward as their suggestions, because it seems to me everyone is just listening to, is waiting to hear from the government, but there's no big advances from the farming community to say, guys, this is how we suggest we need to do this. And unfortunately, the ANC leadership may be forced to play a hard hand at it if you know, if they push too far, and that's not what we desire.
That's a good point. We're not seeing proactive statements from them. All right, let's look back again at 2017 in a different way, because another biggie is bonds. So this is a bit confusing, because the yields go up when investors don't like the country. They want more return on their investment. So what does it mean exactly when we say the SA bond market returned 12% last year?
Yeah, look, it means that it basically underperformed the property sector, it underperformed the equities market in the country, and I think that, you know...
But it suggests confidence from investors?
No, look, I mean, the bond markets generally does return probably about 10% on average in the long run. But at 12%, I would say, you know, the fact that you started to see the yields come down at the end of the year contributed quite significantly to some of that performance you're talking about at 12%. If we hadn't seen that happen, for example, the R186, which is a measure of interest rate perceptions over a 10-year period, the R186 had been trading above 9.54 odd percent. Expect now trading at
I think 8.5.
Yeah, expect trading now at about 8.52 odd percent.
Yeah.
You know, which was quite a big rally. If you can see that dip down there, it meant the bond prices were actually going up. So
and the yields coming down, so investors are saying
exactly.
Good.
And if you see interest rates being cut, if you see policy certainty, if you see the budget coming out showing that the ANC understands that we're in trouble financially, you will see the bond markets actually probably continue to recover because the interest rates are going to go down. We need to urgently address the cost to the national budget. When you look at the interest rates and when you look at the interest liability of 165 billion rands a year, that's very important. I mean, trust me, if you're looking for 12 billion rands to send kids to school and you're paying 165 billion rands a year on debt funding and you're looking to increase the nation's debt, that's not a great picture. Yeah. We need rhetoric that says we're going to squash the national debt, we're going to squash interest payments, and then you can send kids to school for free if the 12 billion is an accurate number.
However, those high interest rates are attracting investors. So I was looking at apparently the JP Morgan Global Government Bond Index only returned 7%. So it makes us really attractive to have these great interest rates.
Yeah, definitely does. But then obviously you have to look at it in dollar terms as well. But I think that the general
we need to get out of debt.
We need to get out of debt. We need the interest rates cycle to allow growth in the economy. You need people to be employed. You need to trust our ministers to do the right thing when they're given a job. We need certainty around ministers being hired and not being fired left, right and center, especially in very sensitive ministries. We cannot have a situation where the public enterprises departments are still being run as if they're spaza shops. I mean, we work too hard. We pay tax to sustain these entities, and I think they just need to be run properly. We need to save money on that front, and we need to just see to it that corruption can, at least just be slightly reduced over time, because it's exactly some of the things that keep, us, very concerned as investors, because with corruption not being tackled head on, I mean, the ANC government hasn't done itself favors, and I hope that changes.
And talking about those yields, a credit rating downgrade. You were saying maybe things can change. Yes, maybe we bring this confidence, certainty. But is there any way we can avoid sort of the continuation of this train heading towards another downgrade with even more serious consequences?
Look, it's simple. I mean, if you look at the appointment of Cyril Ramaphosa and what is done for the economy, and if you look at the fact that the guys are working together, this division, the guys are trying to kill the division between the Premier League and the other guys. I think, when ratings agencies look at that, they're going to try and see if implementation and idea generation at NEC level at the ANC are being done cohesively. If there's any division that brings political uncertainty, at least at this stage, I believe that political uncertainty is thrown out of the window from a ratings agency perspective. And with a stronger currency, inflation will come down, and the economy has a chance, in my view, definitely over time to get re-rated. But the ratings agencies, unfortunately, are always 3 to 6 months behind the curve. But the good thing is that the investing community already prices these things in ahead of time.
So talking about inflation, something else that weighs in is the oil price. So
yes.
I'd love to talk about that, because we've seen that at these highs as well. But looking at this $67 I think we reached today, and there was last year's gains. Some people are saying this is the sweet spot. America will produce more oil, so it's not going to push up too much further, which is good news for our petrol price, or is it?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the concern about the oil price stems from the fact that production cuts have been implemented by the guys in OPEC. And so supplies, questions around supply going forward starting to be asked. And that's why guys are putting money into oil. But I do think at some point you're going to start to see more of those, oil rigs starting to pump oil again, especially in America. And the price, in my view, is over it's highly elevated because there's not necessarily the demand that should justify this price. It's just too expensive. But for us, because
so it'll come down this year.
I
Good
hope
for
it
our
comes
petrol
down.
prices.
I mean, the price of the rand also helps in my view. But can you imagine if you have a firm currency and you've got a cheaper oil price, guys? I mean, the country will fly, I tell you that. I was in Zambia over the past few days when to say the Victoria Falls, you know, their currency had been rebased. Now they're buying the pound at 10.50, they're buying the dollar at 10. They are paying 75 Zambian units to buy 1 rand, cheaper than us. But if you look at the infrastructure and the brain power we have and all the minerals we have and a more diverse economy away from copper that you have in Zambia, certainly South Africa, in my view, definitely needs a re-rating, definitely.
Okay, your last prediction for the day, Steinhoff.
I hate predictions.
Okay, rough prediction. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But here is Steinhoff. I mean, look, it just fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
And even though we saw great gains last week, I think 20%
yes,
more
when they,
one day, it shows it's not coming anywhere, lifting to back where it was. But could this all be fixed somehow?
You know, with this one, we're taking a wait-and-see attitude, in my view, because the challenge with Steinhoff is that, as you've seen in the past few days, we're told that initially 2017 numbers have to be restated. Then it was 2016. Then it's 2015. You know, are they gonna end up restating all the way back to 2010? And that little rally you're seeing there is because they managed to get some of the funding for some of the international businesses, so they don't rely on funding from the parent company. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Steinhoff. But I really think that the moral of the story is, yes,
be careful.
Yes, be careful.
I don't know about you, but the CFO has stepped down, they say, but he's still preparing the 2017 results. Isn't that a bit weird? He must have been, or should have been aware of what's going on, even if it wasn't involved.
Only in Stellenbosch do you get told that the CFO had no idea about what was going on in the deals.
And he's still preparing the financials
only
for this year.
Only in Stellenbosch.
All right, let's end it there. Only in Stellenbosch. Thank you. Owen Nkomo from Nkunzi Wealth Group. Well, let's see how it looked today. A good start to the week for the local market. The JSE All-Share Index rose by 0.5%. The rand, however, fell by more than 1% against the stronger dollar. Owen would say it's still looking good, but after the rally at the start of this year, it is coming off those recent 2.5-year highs. Here's a look at those numbers.